Well, the first weekend after the passing of Queen Elizabeth didn't turn out quite the way the Australian Republican movement predicted it would. For years, the Republicans have been saying that the passing of the beloved Queen would, when it happened, initiate a new stage in Australian history, that the end of her era would be the beginning of ours as a fully independent republic. In January, Malcolm Turnbull said, quote, "The next referendum should be after the end of the Queen's reign. When that occurs, whether by death or abdication, it will be a historical watershed, a time for reflection on the past and, most importantly, the future," unquote. Republican movement chair Peter Fitzsimons said only 3 months ago, quote, "There is no doubt that we," by which he means Republicans, "will get a surge once Australia leans in close and looks at King Charles," unquote. Fitzsimons is famously bad at making predictions, but this one might be his worst yet. Not only did Charles step seamlessly into the role, he also immediately dispensed with his pet political causes, which are unbecoming of a monarch and which Republicans hoped would turn Australians off him as their king. Charles said in his first address to the nation as king, broadcast on Friday,
"It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply."
His separation from these causes was made clear elsewhere in that speech. 13 years ago, Charles was warning us that the future of the planet was in peril, that we had only 96 months in order to save it from man-made environmental catastrophe and only human interaction could prevent it happening. Contrast that with how he now sees his own future. He pledged to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of the United Kingdom for, quote, "the remaining time God grants me," unquote. It's understandable that Charles spent so much of his time and energy over the past few decades pursuing environmental causes and rubbing shoulders with the self-appointed elite at such places as the World Economic Forum. But from the time he became an adult, he was told he couldn't get a job and that the job he'd been born to do the job he'd been born to do, he'd have to wait for his mother to die first. No amount of British stoicism was going to prevent that messing with his head after a decade or two. It's a reassuring sign of the depth, meaning and decency of the British Monarchy that as soon as he was called to fill the role, King Charles snapped into it. And so did the rest of the world. The ceremonies at St James and the Royal Exchange in London on the weekend went ahead as if they were weekly occurrences. In fact, they hadn't been held for 70 years, and even then they weren't televised live around the world to an audience of billions. The occasion provided everyone with a role to play. Crowds gathered outside various royal residences, chanting "Long live the King." The princes and princesses buried the hatchet of recent times and walked among their subjects, and a noticeably multicultural procession of guards and trumpeters put on a polished and often moving show. Even Sadiq Khan, the narcissistic virtue-signalling Mayor of London, dutifully played his part as a member of the Privy Council to witness Charles signing the proclamation at St James Palace.